Easter particularly. Oh, this Easter. Oh, when Granny and Grandpa had a caravan, and we used to pull our caravan and take the boys all over the place. Oh, they did enjoy it. It's a nice experience for children. It is. It's a nice experience. And the thing is, you see, that Mark's doing it because he knows how much fun he had. And so, in turn, they will remember it for their children.
Did you used to go to Neffin? Was it in...
Neffin was a place where what happened was, we went in when I was expecting Andrew, we thought we were going to go on a holiday and we couldn't decide where to go. And so Joe was playing golf one weekend, and there was a tournament on, and one of the chaps who was playing, he was been at school with, and he lived not far away, so he used to see him occasionally. And he said, this chap, I can't remember his name now, Duncan or something like that. He said he's saying he always goes to Wales for his holidays, and he goes to a very nice place called Neffin. So he said, Joe said, do you think we ought to just go and have a look at it? Can we do that? So I said, well, do you want to take Mark and Nigel? This was during the holiday, the Easter holiday. And he said no, so we went over to Sheffield and left the children with mother and father. I went over just for the day, and we decided we liked it, and we went around to see what was available, and there was a very nice 4-bedroom house, and we decided to take that for a month in the summer. So we booked that, and then Andrew was born in June, and so he was only 6 weeks old when we went. But in the meantime, my sister I'd told Mother about this place, and my sister said, is this a big house that you're renting? And I said, the 4 bedrooms. So he said, well, we thought we might like to go to Neffin. Perhaps we could come and stay with you. So they did. And for about, and then we moved from that one that we stayed with to a bigger one. And we went there every year until we bought the van. But they still have a van like ours in Neffin. They bought one, Betty and Ron, and they got that in after we started. Joe, he wanted a van then, so they had a few holidays on their own, and then they bought a van in Neffin. But by that time, Joe decided he wanted to go to Hong Kong, so in 1972. So, but they've still got their van there, and they do use it a lot. They go, it's not so far to go. It takes about 3 hours or so, I think, on the motorway and whatnot. But it's a nice little place, Neffin. Yes, it's very nice, and so they go there. And well, because we went off to Hong Kong then, and our lives sort of changed, and we only sent the boys back to England because Nigel, the first thing that happened when we got to Hong Kong, we had a very nice flat right high up on the peak, and on the opposite side of the road was a beautiful park with swings, and Andrew fell off a swing and broke his wrist. That was the start of it, and I had to took him. Joe used to go get the peak tram down, down to Central. So he always travelled on that, and so I left the car. So I put Andrew in the car, and I took him to the only hospital I knew, which was it was in the Happy Valley area, which is not. Anyway, it wasn't one of the best hospitals, put it mildly. And they put a plaster on his wrist, did it, normally. But on the Sunday we went to the beach, and we met some people we knew, and the wife was a nurse, and she said, I hope you don't mind me commenting, but I don't like the way Andrew's holding his arm. She said, I think you need to see someone from the Queen Mary. She was a nurse. She said, ring up and try and get an appointment. So the next morning, Monday morning, Joe went to work, and the first, about 10 o'clock in the morning, he rang me, and he said, we've got to take the Andrew, got an appointment at 12 o'clock. So can he come down? Well, the boys were at the Peak School, so they could stay. I had to go and see the headmistress and ask if they could stay for lunch. I took them some lunch, and so they stayed for lunch there, and we took them to Queen Mary. And the surgeon was a Scottish man, and a very, very good, a very, very nice man. And he said he took the plaster was falling apart. They put an inferior plaster on his arm, on his wrist and arm, and it started to break up. And when he took the plaster off, the wrist, he said, it slipped half an inch. So what he said, I've got to do this soon.
Alfie,
He said, just a minute, and he disappeared, and he said, I shall operate at 3 o'clock. Do you want to wait?
No.
So I said, well, what's the best?
Alfie.
So he said, he'll not come round straight away, and it'll be all right with us. Just come in the early evening, which we did. And he was in hospital for a couple of days. That was the start of it. He had his arm, he had to break his wrist. It had set solid. He had to break it and reset it. And so I said, will that affect anything in his life in the future? He said, the only thing it will affect is that he can't be an operating surgeon because, he won't have enough control.
No.
I said, oh, well, if it's only that. So, of course, he got his arm in a plaster with a sling, and after a few days, Nigel said when we were having our breakfast, can I have my arm in a sling? So I said, don't be silly. Andrew's broken his wrist, that's why it's like that. He said, but my wrist hurts. So we didn't take much notice of it. And then a few days later, he didn't stay at school for badminton. After school, they used to stay for an hour and play badminton, or, taught them badminton.
Me, I want to play
And
I want to play that green game.
he came home, and I said, why have you come home? You're supposed to be at badminton. He said, my legs are aching. So that night, Joe talked to him, and then he said the next morning, he said, I'm worried about Nigel because Brother Richard, he said exactly the same as Nigel was saying, and he ended up with rheumatic fever. So he said, I'm going to see if I can get to see the number one specialist, Dr. Chow, at the Queen Mary again. He rang me up and said, can you bring him in immediately? If you come down in the car, I'll go with you. We'll go straight to the hospital. And he got rheumatic fever, which affects the heart. So he was in hospital for about a couple of weeks, I think. And they put him on, for 5 years, he had to be on a tablet that, tablets for the heart, what they give them after rheumatic fever. And so we struggled along with that. Andrew had his plaster taken off, and Nigel came home, but he was off school for quite a few weeks until the doctor said he was fit to go back. And they both started to be ill. Literally, the following year, the beginning of the following year, Mark started to be ill, and we didn't know what was wrong with him. He just he just felt ill. He felt unwell. In fact, he got to the stage where we always had to go to see the doctor at the clinic, but the doctor was coming up to see Mark regularly, and he couldn't fathom what was wrong with him. And we were getting more and more worried about him. His temperature used to go sky high, and he used to be ill until about 12 o'clock, and then it used to drop off. So eventually, one morning, Joe woke me up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he said, "I'm going to take Mark to the hospital, to the outpatient, to see if I can get an appointment." And he said, I can't stay because I'm in court. And he said, "I want you to go and make an appointment to see Dr. Chow immediately that day." So he left me and Mark at the waiting, and I went eventually at about 8:30. I went to find out where, which was Dr. Chow's room, where it was his room, and there's a very old building, St Mary's, Queen Mary, and the staircase up to I dropped my mobile. Where is it? Oh, it's there. Thank you. And the stairs went up like that. So I went up the stairs, and I said to somebody, "Which is Dr. Chow's room?" And so they told me which room it was. And so I went in, and his secretary was there. So I said, "What time? Can you tell me what time he arrives?" So she said, "He'll be here at 9 o'clock. He's always very punctual." So I said, "Okay then." I said, "Does he get the lift up or does he walk?" She said, "Walks." So at about 10 minutes to 9, I left Mark down in the waiting area, and I went up. And when I saw him coming up the stairs, because he'd seen Nigel, so he knew me. And I said, "Hello, Dr. Chow." I said, "I want to see him urgently." So he said, "What's the matter? Is it Nigel?" I said, "No." I said, "Mark, my oldest son. There's something wrong with him, and we don't know what it is. And he's sitting down in, waiting downstairs, and he's in a wheelchair. He can't walk." So he said, "Well, I've got appointments all morning." He said, "Just let me go and see. Come into my room." So I went with him. And he said, "I'm going to ask them to bring Mark up so that I can have a look at him." And so I waited, and they brought him up, put him in his wheelchair, and he examined him. And he said, "I don't know what's wrong with him. I can't tell you what's wrong with him, but he is very, very ill." So I said, "Well, I don't know. What can we do?" He said, "I'm going to have to find out now." So he said, "I'll have to cancel all my morning work, and we'll have to do some tests." And we did, and they said, "Come with me." And we went downstairs to where there was a sort of large area with different rooms, doing Mark. Anyway, they brought Mark down eventually, and they took him into this room where he lay on the bed, and they about 20 trainee doctors came and stood around him, and they were taking his heartbeat and his pulse. It was all irregular, all over the place. And I was watching them, the ticker tape comes through And I was watching that, I thought, whatever is the matter with him? Whatever can it be? And eventually, it wasn't Dr. Chow, it was Dr. Chin. Dr. Chin came out, and he said, and he just walked towards me and held his arms out like this. And I just walked into his arms, and he cuddled me. And I started to cry. And he said, I can't tell you what is wrong with him at the moment, because I don't know. We've done every test possible, but we don't know. So he's going to have to stay here. He was in a private room for 3 weeks. I went in the morning and Grandpa went in the evening for 3 weeks, and they didn't know what was wrong with him until after 3 weeks, and then they diagnosed it typhoid. He got typhoid. After that, he was in hospital for another 3 or 4 weeks, and none of his friends could go and see him because of the, danger. And we had to go through an ISIL sort of sheet, and we had to take our shoes off and walk into ISIL, a pad of ISIL, before we could walk over to him. And we did that for about 3 or 4 weeks. He was in hospital, and he came out of hospital, and of course he hadn't been to school, and he was coming up to 14, and Mark said, Joe said, look, he said, we're going to have to sit down and have a serious talk about the boys. They've all had something. Nigel and Andrew are younger, so it's not so important for them. But Mark's coming up to 14. We're going to have to think what we're going to do. He can't live in this climate permanently. That was it, you see. So I said, well, we'll have to go back to England then now. He said, well, I'm not proposing that, because he said, I don't want to go back to England for the time being. I'm making a lot of money and I'm doing well and I'm enjoying my work. He said, I can afford to send him back to school in England. Oh, no, he's not going. He's not going. Forget it. And for 2 or 3 weeks, I wouldn't talk to him about it.
Just no claim.
Eventually, I sort of, I realised, because I talked to other people, and there are so many children from Hong Kong who were going back to school in England. Oh no. And we sent him and he only went for 1 term to start with, and then he came home in the summer, and he said he was enjoying it, liked it. So he went back there, and so then Joe started on about Nigel and Andrew, and he said, if we do it for one, we've got to do it for them all. So eventually I had to come to terms with that, which I didn't like. But Nigel couldn't, at that time when he was young, he was just getting over this. He'd still on all his heart tablets and everything. And so we managed to get Nigel, we managed to get Andrew into a prep school. They were all at different schools. We got Nigel, we got him into Rossall. That was a school not too far away from our home, indeed. And but they couldn't take Mark because he was too old. You see. So eventually, Andrew eventually passed his common entrance and went to Rossall as well. But Mark was too old. And they recommended Bedstone School, which is a college now, and he enjoyed that. He seemed to do very well there, but he left. He got his O levels, and then he'd gone back, and they'd all gone back to school in September. And one day, the doorbell rang. And I went to the door and I could see through the glass. I could see he was a policeman. And so I went to the door. And he said, "You Mrs. Stevenson?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What's happened?" He said, "I just want to have a discussion with you about one of your sons." Oh, crikey. I said, "Well, come in." And what had happened was Mark had had that accident. You hear about it?
Mm.
And he had been injured badly.
Mm.
But his friend, who we'd been saying was killed.
Mm.
And the school never told me about it. And the parents of Alan, his friend who was killed, never told me about it. And this happened.
Daisy.
It's no good if you start a climb.